So which food has been found to perpetuate, to drive, to worsen 55 different diseases, from osteoporosis to depression, anxiety, IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, thyroid conditions, and many more? This all according to the New England Journal of Medicine. I'll give you one guess. It's gluten. So what the heck is going on with gluten? What is it? And why is it such a big thing now? We're going to talk about that. So the gluten-free industry is skyrocketing. It's a $15 billion industry and growing every single year. Why are people making the switch? What is this doing to us? So what is gluten? Gluten is a protein found in wheat, barley, oats, rye, and spelt. And when you think gluten, think glue. So remember, I don't remember if you guys took the old slices of bread and rolled them up into little balls. Well, that's the gluten holding that together. And so this can be very problematic for people. And we'll get to that later. So gluten is found in things like, of course, baked goods, cakes, cookies, crackers, pies, pizzas, pastas, things like that. But can it also be hidden in things like shampoos, toothpastes, deodorants, condiments that you wouldn't really think. So you have to be really cognizant of what you're eating. And as a rule of thumb, if it comes in a box or a bag and it doesn't say gluten-free, it probably has gluten in it. So why is gluten bothering us, or is it really bothering us, or are we just making this up? Well, we know that 1 in 100 people, so 1% of America has celiac disease. So that's an autoimmune disease where the lining of the gut gets damaged and eroded when someone consumes gluten. Okay, that's 1%. Big deal, right? So we also know now that there's a thing called non-celiac gluten sensitivity, which is even more widespread than celiac disease. And some researchers think that up to 30% of America or more has this gluten sensitivity. And so this is way more widespread than we initially thought. So what really happens when we eat gluten if we are sensitive to it, per se? So some new studies have showed that gluten has a profound impact not only on the body, but on the brain. So we showed that gluten consumption in those who are gluten sensitive had decreased blood flow to the frontal lobe of the brain. That's our decision-making center of the brain. So SPECT scans have actually showed that. So this is really, you think about it, if you get up and you have breakfast and you've got cereal and toast and you head off to work and you try to work with decreased blood going to your brain, it's not really good, is it? Or if your kid gets up and they want a Pop-Tart and maybe some cereal also, you send them off to school and you want them to sit there and learn and behave all day, it doesn't mesh well. So we're feeding our kids junk and then asking them to perform tasks that we couldn't even do if we were given the same thing. So that's my 2 cents on that. So what does gluten? Gluten also causes inflammation all over the body, especially inflammation in the brain, like we just talked about. So gluten triggers our opioid receptors in the brain, the same ones that certain drugs like heroin activate. That's why it's so addicting. We also see that feeding our children gluten, introducing to them under 2 years of age, before their gut really seals and their immune system becomes set and robust, that doubles the risk for celiac disease. That's why it's so important to feed our kids very, very nutritious, balanced, healthy diets when they're young. No junk food, no gluten. It also showed that the white matter in our brain was severely damaged in those with celiac disease. So we know the role that gluten can play in the body. And how does that happen? So when people with celiac or people with gluten sensitivity, and anyone really, according to Dr. Vajani, he's one of the foremost autoimmune researchers, he showed that in all people what gluten does it releases this protein called zonulin in the gut. So zonulin unlocks our gut cells, and that's not good. We want a really nice tight gut barrier. That's how we absorb food, but it's how we keep out bad bugs, parasites, what have you, and that's how the immune system remains set. Most of our immune system's in our gut. So when that we eat gluten, the zonulin breaks open our gut, even for a short period of time, things can leak into our body. This can perpetuate things like leaky gut, but it leads to systemic inflammation. So almost all the inflammation in our body comes from our gut. And many people, including Dr. Amy Meyer, suggest that eating gluten can cause an inflammation storm for up to 3 months after we eat it. That's why it's so important, if we're going gluten-free, to be really diligent when we do that. So why is gluten a problem now all of a sudden? I mean, we've eaten gluten for thousands of years, right? So the gluten of today is not the same as the gluten of even our grandparents. So in the past, 40, 50 years or so, gluten's been, or wheat especially, has been hybridized, and the gluten content in our grains is, some estimates, up to 40 times stronger, more potent than it was decades ago. So this is all leading towards, a big storm, and this is, we've already seen the repercussions of this with autoimmune disorders, anxiety, depression, IBS, epilepsy, autism. All of these things are caused by gut dysfunction and the immune system not being able to function correctly. So are there ways to find out if you're gluten sensitive? Yes, there are. There's certain tests that can test for gluten sensitivity. Sometimes these can run a little expensive. What I do in my office, I usually tend towards an elimination diet. So as simple as, taking gluten out of your diet for, a couple months just to see. Now, I've seen people that say, yeah, doc, I'm going gluten-free, all except for my couple beers at night. You're not going to take my beer from me. Or, yeah, I'm going gluten-free, but I've got, I eat a couple crackers every day still. Or I've got a pizza on Fridays. That's not going to hurt me. Well, like we talked about, the inflammation in the gut from this gluten can last for months. So the goal is to get people off 100% of gluten and seeing how that affects their health. Usually we see decreased inflammatory markers, blood sugar balances, a balancing of the immune system and calming of the immune response, less brain fog, more energy, so many different things. Now, if you try to go gluten-free and maybe you're just not getting the results you need, I would recommend seeking out a functional medicine doctor. And maybe some other things going on, especially in your gut. You could have overgrowth of certain bacteria or certain infections in your gut that need to be eliminated in order for you to get optimal health. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm gonna go find some place to do with all this great Wonder Bread. Look at that ingredient list, by the way. Wow, unbelievable. So guys, I hope you have an amazing week. This is Dr. Seth Gerlach.